He was just a small boy, no taller than the counter he leaned on, with wide, curious eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories. The city around him roared with wealth, ambition, and the relentless chase for more, but he had none of that. All he wanted was simple: to check his balance. Not the balance of millions in a bank, not the balance of possessions and power, but the balance of what little he had earned with his honest, tiny hands. When the millionaire laughed, dismissing him as a mere child who couldn't possibly understand money, the boy only smiled quietly, oblivious to the judgment. And then the screen blinked, and the laughter froze, leaving a silence that neither of them would ever forget. The boy's name was Arjun, a quiet child who lived in a cramped apartment at the edge of the bustling city. Every morning, he would walk barefoot across the dusty lanes, carrying a small bag of fruits he sold at the local market. His world was measured in coins and the occasional smiles he received from neighbors who knew him. Despite the struggle, he possessed an inexplicable lightness, a calm acceptance of life's small joys. His eyes held wonder for the simplest things: the flutter of a pigeon's wings, the smell of rain on concrete, the warmth of a stranger's kindness. Arjun had never seen much money, nor did he crave it. Yet he understood its meaning, the power it held over people, and the invisible chains it could forge between hearts. One evening, Arjun stood outside a towering glass building, staring at the bank inside. He had been saving for weeks, every coin he could spare tucked carefully under the wooden floorboard of his tiny room. Today, he decided, he would check the balance, not out of greed, but to see if his careful effort had grown, to witness the fruit of his small labor. The massive doors opened automatically, and the lobby gleamed like a world he had only imagined in stories. Men and women in tailored suits passed him without a glance, their expressions hard and hurried. Arjun felt a flutter of nervous excitement, but also a sense of dignity. He knew he belonged here in his small way. At the counter he saw him, the millionaire, a man whose reputation for wealth was matched only by his ego. He laughed aloud when he saw Arjun, assuming he was a child with no purpose, a toy in the world of money. "What do you want, little boy? A lollipop?" he scoffed, tapping his own phone with casual arrogance. Arjun looked up at the man with unwavering eyes, unshaken by the ridicule. "I just want to check my balance," he said simply, holding out his tiny passbook. The words were soft, yet they carried an innocence and honesty that felt alien to the hardened man. The millionaire's laughter echoed, sharp and dismissive, until the boy stepped aside, letting the machine read his account, and the screen flickered in a way that would change everything. When the screen displayed the number, silence fell. The millionaire froze, the grin disappearing, replaced by something unfamiliar: shock, confusion, maybe even shame. Arjun's balance was modest by any worldly measure, yet the path he had taken to earn it, the hours of work, the unwavering integrity, the tiny sacrifices no one noticed, was a story the man could never buy. In that moment, Arjun's world of quiet effort collided with the millionaire's world of ostentation, revealing a truth far larger than money itself. Wealth can be counted, but character, patience, and honesty cannot. And for the first time in years, the man laughed no longer. Arjun's days had never been easy, yet he approached them with an almost magical calm. The market was a place of harsh voices, impatient buyers, and the sting of rejection when fruit spoiled or coins were refused. But Arjun learned patience early, understanding that life gave in its own time. One afternoon, a woman stumbled near his stall, her bag ripped and coins spilling. Without hesitation, Arjun helped her gather them, refusing the small tip she offered. "It's nothing," he said, brushing his hands clean on his worn trousers. She smiled, shaken, her eyes moist. That moment, small as it seemed, reinforced a lesson Arjun carried into every interaction: kindness never loses value, even when it goes unnoticed. Back at home, he often stared at the ceiling of his room, imagining a future he could scarcely name. His father had disappeared when he was a toddler, leaving Arjun and his mother to navigate the world alone. She worked long hours as a cleaner, yet she taught him the priceless worth of honesty, humility, and generosity. "Money can disappear, Beta," she said one evening. But what you carry inside, your heart, your courage, that never will. Arjun remembered those words when he faced the millionaire's laughter, the condescending smiles of strangers, or the temptations to take shortcuts. The small boy inside him refused to shrink, to compromise his values, even when the world seemed bigger, richer, and more intimidating than he could ever be. Yet challenges came in relentless waves. One day, a neighbor accused Arjun of stealing coins from a tip jar at a cafe, a lie he could neither argue against nor explain. He stood silently, eyes steady, as accusations flew. The woman behind the counter looked at him with doubt, and he felt the sting of injustice pierce deep. But instead of rage, he chose calmness. He continued his work at the market, his hands rough and calloused, his smile unwavering. Slowly, the truth surfaced. The coins had fallen from someone else's pocket. The relief was fleeting, however, as Arjun realized that integrity often demanded patience more than justice demanded recognition. Each small act of goodness was its own reward, even if unseen. The millionaire, observing all of this from his high tower, began to see something he had long forgotten. Here was a child, small, vulnerable, yet unbroken, facing life's harshness with dignity and grace. The boy's balance was far more than numbers. It was a testament to resilience, character, and moral wealth. The realization unsettled the man deeply. He had never considered that someone with nothing in material terms could hold everything that truly mattered. For the first time, he questioned his own choices, the compromises he had made, and the shallow victories he had celebrated. Arjun, in his quiet, unassuming way, was teaching him a lesson that money could never buy. Winter came to the city, and with it, the chill of survival. Arjun wrapped himself in a frayed shawl, hands numb, as he walked miles to fetch vegetables and bread for his mother and neighbors who could not afford the market's high prices. His small hands, once soft and playful, now bore the marks of relentless labor, yet he never complained. Each coin earned was a step towards something greater than himself, a way to sustain those around him, to give quietly without fanfare. One evening, he met the millionaire outside the bank, standing alone, looking down at his phone. The child, noticing the man's expression, approached cautiously, instinctively offering a piece of bread he had saved. "Here, it's fresh," Arjun said softly. The millionaire froze, a strange warmth rising inside him. He expected ridicule, mockery, perhaps an excuse to turn the boy away. Instead, he received a gesture of generosity so pure, so uncomplicated, that it pierced the armor of his ego. He remembered the screen, the number that had silenced his laughter, and now, the boy's simple act of sharing. It was as if the world had paused, and time itself insisted he see what truly mattered: connection, compassion, the quiet courage of someone who asks for nothing and gives everything. He could not speak. His mind reeled, unable to reconcile the vast gap between his wealth and this child's modest life, yet here stood a teacher, small and unassuming. Arjun continued his routine without expectation, selling fruits, collecting coins, helping neighbors, and carrying kindness as naturally as breathing. The millionaire observed, slowly drawn into the rhythm of the boy's life, noticing the subtle joys that money had never bought: laughter shared over a cracked pavement, gratitude in the eyes of the elderly, trust built without contracts or conditions. Each evening, he returned to his penthouse, staring at the ceiling, haunted by a simple truth: all his riches had never taught him patience, humility, or the meaning of giving. He wondered how a child, without status, without influence, without a voice that commanded attention, could teach lessons that had eluded him for decades. Then came a crisis. Arjun's mother fell ill, too weak to rise, too exhausted to care for herself. The boy's small savings were not enough for proper treatment, and desperation clawed at him. He approached the bank machine again, the same one where his modest balance once shone like a trophy of effort. The millionaire, witnessing the scene from afar, felt a surge of responsibility he had never known. He stepped forward, offering assistance quietly, without ceremony. Arjun, initially hesitant, accepted with grace, and for the first time, the man experienced the humility of giving without expectation of return. The world shifted subtly, imperceptibly, yet irrevocably, for both of them. Spring arrived slowly, and with it, the fragile bloom of hope. Arjun's mother recovered, aided by the kindness of the man who had once laughed at him. Life continued, demanding endurance, yet it now carried a new dimension, of gratitude, of interwoven lives, of lessons silently absorbed. The millionaire began to frequent the market, observing the child, listening to the stories whispered by neighbors about his honesty and courage. With each encounter, he felt his ego soften, replaced by a deeper understanding. Wealth was not measured by zeros in a bank, but by the impact one had on others' lives, by the choices one made when no one was watching. Arjun's balance remained small, but the value of what he carried was immeasurable, a wealth no ledger could capture. Misunderstandings arose, as they always do. Rumors spread that the millionaire had coerced the child into some scheme, that the boy was manipulating the man for gain. Arjun's face, calm and unwavering, shielded him from harm. He continued his honest labor, refusing to engage in gossip or confrontation. The millionaire, aware of these whispers, realized that integrity was a force far stronger than public perception, and that it required courage, patience, and an unshakable belief in one's own values. The child's silent strength became a mirror, reflecting back the weaknesses and insecurities the man had long ignored. Through quiet observation and shared moments, a bond formed, unspoken yet profound. They learned from each other, one teaching patience, humility, and the worth of simplicity, the other sharing knowledge of the wider world, of resources and opportunities that could ease struggles. The child's eyes remained bright, untainted by power or pride, while the millionaire's gaze softened, revealing a vulnerability he had hidden for decades. They discovered a rhythm of giving and receiving that transcended status, that honored human dignity above material gain. Slowly, the city itself seemed to notice, as neighbors watched the millionaire quietly assisting, inspired by the boy's simple, steadfast goodness. By the end of spring, the boy's modest stall flourished, not from cunning or ambition, but from trust, loyalty, and the integrity he had cultivated through years of small, deliberate choices. The millionaire, once blinded by pride, now found meaning in actions that served others. Both understood the truth of the balance. Numbers could never capture the richness of life shaped by kindness, patience, and courage. The boy had transformed not only his own world but had quietly reshaped the heart of a man who had thought he knew the measure of wealth. Together, they walked a path illuminated by humanity, humility, and the lessons only life itself could teach. Years passed, and Arjun grew, yet he retained the gentle strength of his childhood. He became a beacon in the market, a symbol of integrity and quiet power. People sought him not for wealth but for guidance, for reassurance that goodness still existed in a world obsessed with numbers and status. He remained small in stature, but immense in spirit, proving that courage, kindness, and patience outlasted the fleeting allure of material gain. The millionaire, older and wiser, often watched from afar, marveling at the child who had changed him more profoundly than any fortune could. Every lesson, every act of compassion, every moment of restraint became a thread weaving a tapestry of understanding between them. One day, a crisis threatened the community. A storm destroyed many stalls, leaving families desperate. Arjun, undeterred, organized aid, rallying neighbors and even the millionaire to help rebuild. There was no pomp, no announcement, just the steady rhythm of action guided by care. The millionaire marveled at the humility and determination of someone who had little, yet gave so freely. Each repair, each shared meal, each comforting word reflected the balance that Arjun had measured in his life from the beginning. Small actions, grounded in values, could change the world. The millionaire realized that true power lay not in wealth, but in the ability to uplift, inspire, and protect. Yet it was a small gesture that left the greatest mark. Arjun noticed a boy, no older than he had been, staring nervously at the broken stalls. Without hesitation, he offered guidance and encouragement, sharing his own journey of effort, patience, and trust. The millionaire watched, understanding fully now that legacy was not about money, influence, or accolades, but the quiet shaping of hearts and lives. He saw himself in the child, and Arjun in that boy, and the circle of giving and understanding expanded, unbroken. Life had taught him that humility was not weakness, and that compassion was the truest measure of success. At the end of the story, the millionaire finally understood what he had laughed at so many years ago. The child's balance was modest, yes, but it contained everything money could not buy: integrity, patience, courage, and the power to change lives. The laughter that once belittled now became gratitude, the scorn that once isolated now became respect. Arjun, small yet immeasurably strong, had not only checked his balance but had also balanced the scales of life itself, teaching a man, and an entire community, the timeless value of human kindness, humility, and the quiet strength of a heart that gives without expecting return. Life's true wealth is measured not by numbers, possessions, or power, but by the kindness we sow, the patience we practice, and the integrity we uphold. A single act of humility or compassion can ripple far beyond our imagination, transforming hearts, healing wounds, and shaping legacies that outlast time. Arjun's small hands and quiet courage remind us that no matter how insignificant we may feel, our choices matter, our goodness counts, and the simplest human actions can illuminate the deepest truths about life. True richness lies in empathy, humility, and the unwavering belief that every soul we touch can change the world for the better.